Hello. So we're going to be looking at how seriousness can sabotage our communication effectiveness and how humor and having a bit more fun can make us much, much more effective as communicators, as trainers, or for instance, when selling products or giving internal presentations. The CIA actually use overt, over the top seriousness to sabotage terrorist organizations. And I'll be sharing with you shortly how they use these techniques and how effective they are in sabotaging organizations from the inside, and how we actually use a lot of these techniques unknowingly ourselves. At the end of the talk, I'd like you to contact me, and you can do that through my email or through Stand Up and Deliver. And if you contact me, you will get a free copy of Virtual Presentation Mastery. Hey, the critically acclaimed book, which I'll send straight over to you. So should we actually use humor? Well, the problem is that one person's funny can be another person's yuck. So I found this photograph on Facebook and it made me laugh. And so I thought I'd share it with yourselves. But some people watching this might go, actually, it's not very funny. So maybe we should actually avoid using humor. The problem is that it works. So a few years ago, KFC ran out of chicken, which is quite a big deal for a chicken company. And they issued this apology, and it went viral. And this apology by KFC did a couple of things. Number one, it did the thing it was supposed to do, which is it actually issued an apology. But the second thing was that it changed how people saw the brand. So literally by issuing this humorous apology, it cut through the noise and managed to get through that KFC was changing, the brand was moving up market, and literally around the world, sales increased. So earlier on, I shared how the CIA infiltrate terrorist organizations and attempt to destroy them from the inside by using the worst of corporate communication behaviors. So I'd just like to share 4 of the techniques they use to destroy meetings and meeting culture within terrorist organizations, and see if you recognize any of these 4 from your own business. The second is haggle over the precise wording of communications as frequently as possible and at great length. Seen that happen. Bring up irrelevant issues as frequently as possible, and refer back to matters decided upon at the last meeting and attempt to reopen the question of the advisability of that decision. So seriousness is dangerous. It creates a distance between you and the audience. That's the first thing where it can be genuinely dangerous. The second thing is that within a Teams call, being overly seriously disengages your audience. And finally, seriousness makes things non-sticky. So we tend to only be able to remember about 10% of the information we're given, and that number goes down significantly when things are non-sticky. So also, seriousness is dangerous. So seriousness creates a distance between you and the audience. Secondly, in a Teams call or a Zoom call, the moment you start being really serious, you'll probably find that people will start to become very disengaged. And the third thing is it makes things non-sticky. So all of us have a problem remembering stuff. That's just being human. But when it's overly serious, that ability to recall drops significantly. So what can we do about that? And what gets in the way So bearing in mind, we know this stuff works. We know humor works. What gets in the way of us using it? Well, I want you to imagine I've asked you to take part in a comedy improvisation game. And it's one of those games that if you came along to the workshop thinking, oh, I do hope Jack doesn't get us to be teapots and that sort of thing, it's that game. Okay. And the game's in 3 parts. And in the first part, I divide you into pairs. And in your pair, I tell you that one of you is going to be a sculptor and the other person is going to be a lump of clay. And then I ask the sculptors to mold the person who's the clay into a really boring sculpture with a title. Now, I reckon if I asked you to do that, you could do that pretty easily. Wouldn't be a problem. Some of you would come up with, a plank of wood, or I know somebody waiting to be let into a Teams call. Then we move on to part 2. And in part 2, I'd ask the sculptors to turn the clay into a silly sculpture. As silly as they like, okay, with a title. Again, I think you could probably do this, maybe a bit more difficult, a bit more stressful, but that's okay. And some of these would be funny. Some of these, would be really, really funny. However, in part 3, I'd now ask our sculptors to mold the clay into a funny sculpture with a title that would make me laugh. And they'd have 30 seconds to do it this time. What do you think would happen to the room? Absolute silence. I've done this exercise hundreds of times, and every single time you get this like tumbleweed moment. And the room changes from fun, energetic, ideas, creative, to nothing. So what do you think's happened? Yeah, essentially, people are scared. People are fearful. And when people are fearful and anxious, their creativity disappears. And also their ability to communicate, their ability to have fun. Quite reasonably, you might be sat there thinking, well, why do we need to use humor? So I'm going to share with you why I teach comedy improvisation in my workshops. And I'm going to talk about an experiment that took place a few years ago at MIT, where 2 professors, Kudrowitz and Wallace, decided to do an experiment to find out who would be the best product designers within the university. Would it be on their product design course, product designers? Would it be engineers? Or would it be comedy improvisers? And they asked them to come up with loads and loads of product designs. And then these were blind tested by about 50,000 people from around the world on 3 criteria. Number 1, was it novel, original? Was it valuable? Was it useful? And was it feasible? Could you see it actually being made? And what they discovered was that far and away the best ideas came from not product designers, not engineers, but comedy improvisers. And so they dug deep and they thought, well, what are they doing, these comedy improvisers, bearing in mind they've got no product design experience, to come up with the best ideas? And they found they were doing 3 things. The first thing is that they were using that concept of yes and, which you might have heard of, accept and build. So they were accepting and building on ideas from colleagues, which product designers and engineers tended to go into their heads and not share. And they were also open, crucially, to the ideas that they were in their own head, accepting and building on that. And then the third thing they noticed was that amongst the comedy improvisers was much more laughter, much more levity, playfulness, jokes, banter than amongst the product designers and engineers. And so that's why they now teach comedy improvisation at MIT. So I'm now going to share with you 3 techniques to help you add more humor to your business communication. So the first method is thinking playful. Now, I think within organizations, it's absolutely okay to be serious. Of course it is. It's just getting the balance right. Humor doesn't mean you have to be a stand-up comedian. It can simply be sharing light-hearted moments or inside jokes that make the audience feel connected. People will engage more if they feel like they know you. The second thing is get out of the way. So I want you to imagine you've been invited to a pool party in California. It's about 6 o'clock in the evening. Everyone's had some drinks. It's a hot evening. What's going to happen at a certain point is that somebody is going to jump into this pool. However, is anyone going to jump in that pool if there's a little brown thing floating on the surface? Just a small one? I suspect not. And this is one of the challenges for leaders, is that if you are serious, and some of us are, then you don't have to change who you are, but be careful to make sure that you're not in the way, that you're not that turd in the pool. So move out of the way and let those who can do the funny stuff do their work. And then the third thing is think over the line, is to look for those opportunities that are a little bit more risky and a bit more dangerous. So I'll give you an example of this. I don't know whether you've heard of Seth Godin, and he talks about purple cows. So for instance, if you're driving on the motorway and you see a cow, you won't remark on that cow and you will forget about that cow instantly. However, that cow happens to be purple, you will talk about that cow forevermore. And when we're working with new comedians, I talk about the need to go over the line. And that's because when comedians are starting out, they have a tendency to try and play safe. And that safe area tends to be the world of, and that safe tends to be the world of late night DJs and sales reps. And we don't want to go there. It's the same concept when organizations are trying to communicate. Now, I'm lucky enough to work with Red Whale, who are an amazing team of general practitioners who provide the latest medical guidelines to other GPs so they can make better diagnosis and treatment plans. However, they also work alongside another organization you might have heard of called Milner. And when I first worked with them, the challenge the Macmillan presenters had was their topic, in that you can't be frivolous, you can't be jokey, you can't be funny, really, when you're talking about cancer. And yet, the difficulty there was if you're doing a day-long training on cancer diagnosis, is there are doctors leaving the room without the right information because literally they've fallen asleep. So we spent a day with the Macmillan presenters over the line. And the stuff they came up with was amazing. And they implemented most of it. And one quick example is that they wanted to do a section on post-operative care for prostate cancer. And the rule being that slow and steady wins the race rather than going really quick at something and chucking loads of drugs at it. And a couple of them came up with this idea of why don't we do that section with a tortoise and a rabbit, like a hare, and do it with puppets. And then somebody else said, well, actually, Jack, we'll need a giraffe. And I said, well, why do you need a giraffe? And they said, well, it's because a lot of men, after the operation, they suffer from this. And actually, what we want to do is the opposite. We want the giraffe's neck to grow. And so they presented that section with puppets of a giraffe, rabbit, and tortoise. They didn't get a single complaint, but crucially, their scores, their engagement scores rose by over 30% from 3.1 to 4.2. And on top of that, if you think about it, you've got medics and doctors going back to their surgery, remembering what they've heard and making better diagnosis. So they cut through the noise. And this is the crucial thing for you all. Today, we're in a world where we have trillions more messages than we had even 10 years ago. And that number is going to increase with AI again and again and again. And human beings can only take on board so much information. So to cut through that noise, we have to go over the line. We have to experiment and go to that place. We have to do it safely, and you can do it safely. And we really don't have a choice in this. We have to go over that line, whether it's radical and challenging or fun and playful, to cut through the noise. Okay, I'm going to finish by just sharing 3 benefits to booking me for my training for Stand Up and Deliver. The first is that all our sessions are bespoke. Okay, so not off the shelf. It will be designed specifically with your team in mind and their wants and needs and where you want to get them to. The second thing is that we look to have a lasting impact. So these photographs, by the way, are from a session I ran for Microsoft. And the thing is, if people are laughing, they're listening, but crucially, they also remember. So this sort of feedback is pretty typical of our sessions. And the third thing is it's about results. So yeah, without clear, quantifiable, objective results, then all of this is meaningless. So we get fantastic feedback from all our clients. All right. Now, all right. So now we've just about finished. I've got one quick story to tell you, plus a couple of freebies. So go, if you want to get that free copy of Virtual Presentation Mastery, then go to my website. Here's a QR code of the website. So click on that QR code and that will take you through to Stand Up and Deliver and the contact page, and just fill in the form there. Very, very simple. And you'll get yourself a free copy of Virtual Presentation Mastery. There's also one further freebie in that I'm running a workshop on how to put together presentations, standout presentations using AI. Now, you know, the reality is this thing has arrived and it's changing. I don't know about you, but it's changing the way I create my own presentations, the way I create. It's like having a super bright, amazing EA sat next to you, giving you fantastic advice. But the danger is that we can lose our voice and lose that creativity and stop and no longer cut through with being human. So I'm going to take you through some tricks and techniques that can really make a massive difference to your presentations. It's about putting in the right instructions to your AI. So it's about putting in the right instructions to your AI so that you can get personalized human presentations and ask the right questions and give it the right instructions. So one last story. I've talked about going over the line. I've talked about levity. I've talked about getting out of the way. So the last story I want to tell you is about working with a Saudi bank. And I was working with their marketing team, particularly their head of marketing. And he said, I want to go over the line. I want to use some humor, be a bit playful, and cut through the noise because we need to get through to the 20-year-olds and younger, and we're not doing that at the moment. And so they came up with loads and loads of ideas. And one of the ideas was to work with a rapper that one of the one of his team knew. And they could get this guy for peanuts, and they ran the idea past the board. The board said no, so they did it anyway. And it cost about $1,000 to do 2 short films. Anyway, the video went viral. When they went back to the board all went, brilliant, well done. Actually, that's fantastic, apart from one member who was still a bit annoyed. However, it had done the job, 10 times the normal attention, etc., etc., etc. And it had cost about 100th of their normal spend on a piece of marketing, maybe even less than that. And here it is.
Check. Back with the best app in the game. They got a marketplace now, so I guess you know the name. The one-stop shop, what you want they got. Like gaming cards, PlayStation, baby, or Xbox. Sriracha Bank got you covered, whatever you need. Easy payments and installments, so you can proceed. They got gift cards too, Jerry to noon. Shopping, antiviruses, alright tunes, yeah. Get access by using your phone. That's progress, baby, and back to the bone. Every time you see me coming, man, I'm using the best Sriracha Bank app. Just press refresh, buy minutes with STC Mobile too. Stay connected with your friends, rock out with the crew. They got the Sahih, so what you need to do, get over there, baby, and check out the blue. Yeah.
So there we have it. Thank you very, very much for listening, and thank you for your time. Here's just a reminder of the QR code to my website, the free copy of the book that you'll get if you go through to my website. Just fill in the form and I'll send it through to you. Virtual Presentation Mastery. And hope I've shared with you 3 useful tips that can make a real difference to your business communication. Thank you for your time.